Whenever you're looking for a new job, you're likely to encounter a variety of interviews in your job search, and it can be a little confusing to know what to expect in each one. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 7 most common interview types that you're likely to encounter and what to expect in them. Job interviews come in a variety of formats, and they're all designed to assess a candidate's fit for their particular role and the company that they're interviewing for. Now, of course, we have to remember that interviewing is a two-way street, so make sure that you're asking good questions in return so that you assess the company just as much as they're assessing you. So in this video, let's break down the 7 most common job interview types that you're likely to encounter, and more importantly, what to expect in each one. But before we get into that, if you're interested in learning how to supercharge your job search and your career, make sure you sign up for my free weekly newsletter, because in it I share actionable, concise tips on how to approach your job search with more authority, and more importantly, how to look at your career more as the CEO. Because if you want to reach the summit of your career, you have to do it with authority and conviction, and that's exactly what this newsletter teaches. Keep in mind, it's absolutely free. Hope to see you there. Okay, so let's talk job interviews. The first and most common job interview type, probably one that you've sat on dozens of times, is the traditional one-on-one interview. Now, this is going to be in person, face-to-face with your interviewer. And in this interview, the interviewer is collecting data and information about you and whether or not you're a good fit for the role. They're learning about your attributes, your contributions, and all the wonderful things that you've accomplished in your past that are hopefully directly related to the role. And the great thing about this interview is that it allows you to establish rapport and gives you a chance to really connect with the interviewer so that you can truly show your strengths for the role. Oftentimes you'll experience this interview when you meet with the hiring manager for the first time on site. And usually in this interview, the interviewer will have a predefined list of questions that they'll go through. They'll walk through your background and give you a chance to ask questions yourself. In general, I think that this is the easiest interview to ace because you're able to sit in front of the interviewer. You're able to establish rapport in a more relaxed and natural way, which leads us to the next type of interview that you're likely to encounter, which is the phone, or probably in today's day and age, more accurately, the video interview. And I think as a result of the pandemic, we've all become pretty accustomed to interviewing through Skype, Zoom, or some other video conferencing tool. Oftentimes, this will be the first interaction you'll have with a human at the company, and usually it's in the form of a recruiter phone screen. And the purpose of that recruiter phone screen is to make sure that you meet the base level requirements for the position so that the recruiter wants to send you on to the hiring manager, that they're not wasting their time. Now, in addition to making sure that you meet the base level requirements for the position, we're also assessing your communication skills and your level of interest for the role. And this is a great opportunity for you to make sure that you're getting all of your questions answered about whether or not it's a good cultural fit, whether or not their expectations are reasonable, and of course, compensation and all those other things. In addition to the recruiter phone screen, you may also have a first round interview with your hiring manager, also virtually. And they'll usually pick up where the recruiter left off and go into a deeper assessment of your technical skills and your motivational fit for the role. But if you pass those, you're likely to move on to a panel interview, which is the next interview on our list. A panel interview is where you meet with a panel of people. They're usually key stakeholders in various parts of the business. Now, sometimes a panel can be meeting individually with a series of people, so the traditional one-on-one, but just a group of them in succession, where you might move from one room to another, or interviewer after interviewer will come into the room in succession. Or the panel interview could be you meeting with multiple interviewers at the same time and in the same room. Now, this could be as few as 2 people, but it could be as many as 10. And I personally once had to interview in front of a team of 10 different executives in the same room. They were all sitting around a board table, and I was at the head of the table, and they were just grilling me one after another. Fortunately, I did well enough to get the job offer, but it was very intimidating. So hopefully your panel interview is a little less intense than that. And the reason why the panel interview can be pretty tricky is that each stakeholder is often interviewing from their own unique perspective. So what one person is assessing could be completely different than what the second person is assessing. And it's important to note that if you're in a panel interview with more than one interviewer, each interviewer is going to have their interview question queued up in advance. So when you're answering this person's question, this person's already got their interview question lined up. So it can be very quick and in succession. So in a way, you have to have your head on a swivel, and that can be pretty tricky and also pretty intimidating. So good interview strategy here is absolutely crucial if you want to ace this round. Next up, we have the behavior-based interview, which is a very common interview type, especially in corporate America. You probably have heard of it before, but in case you're not familiar, the premise of behavior-based interviewing operates under the assumption that your past performance is the best indicator of your future performance. So in other words, how you behaved in the past in a certain circumstance or scenario is likely how you would behave in the future if you were in a similar circumstance or scenario. So that's why you have a lot of these questions start with, tell me about a time when. And that's how you can know whether or not it's a behavior-based interview. Now, personally, behavior-based interviewing is my favorite type of interview because if you're good at telling stories, you can really excel here because that's exactly what they're looking for. People who can tell really effective short stories about their past. And if you know what you're doing, you can just hit these ones out of the park all day long every day. Another type of interviewing that you might find is the case study interview. And what the case study interview is you're given time in advance of the interview. It might even be actually at the interview itself where they give you 30 minutes to prepare something, or they might give you a take-home assignment that they want you to come back in front of a panel of people and then present what you came up with. Oftentimes, these are hypothetical business situations that they put you in so they can see how you analyze the problem, identify the core issues, and then create a solution. And the reason why these can be pretty tricky is the interview team typically has a way that they want the problem solved. So if you're not following a certain methodology that's commonly accepted in the industry, you could find yourself getting into deep water pretty quickly. Furthermore, it can be pretty stressful if you're not good at thinking on your feet and defending your decisions, because you can guarantee that one of the interviewers is going to challenge why you did something this way and not that. But keep in mind, just because they're challenging you doesn't mean that you did it wrong. They're just wanting to see how you operate under pressure. Now, before you freak out, the case interview is not super common, especially at the lower levels of an organization. However, if you get into higher levels or specific job types, you might expect to see a case study become part of the interviewing process. Next up, we have the group interview. And the group interview is exactly what it sounds like. You're interviewing with a group of other candidates in the same room at the same time. And obviously, it can be a little weird to see your competition sitting right to the left or right of you, and you can hear their answers. So in a way, you're competing with them in real time. Now, keep in mind, they may actually be hiring more than one of you, so the interviewers will be likely assessing you for how well you collaborate and how you interact with your fellow teammates and what your teamwork is like. Group interviews are not very common outside of service-related industries where a high degree of interpersonal skill and teamwork is required. In fact, the only time I've ever heard of this being utilized is in the airline industry, where they were interviewing mass amounts of flight attendants. Next up, we have the stress interview, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Stress interviews are designed to put candidates into highly stressful situations to see how they operate and how they problem solve while they're dealing with this stress. Interviewers may use tactics like asking tough or unusual questions. So, in other words, the sell me this pen type of question may come up to a salesperson. Alternatively, you may be asked the impossible question of how many traffic lights are there in New York City? They'll also interrupt you frequently, and then they'll make the environment very confrontational. The idea here is to get the candidate to be uncomfortable so that they can see how you operate under pressure and whether or not you can keep your calm and composure. Now, before you get too stressed out with these interviews, they're fairly rare, and you probably won't encounter too many of them unless you're a salesperson or you work in a highly analytical role that has a lot of stress and a lot of challenge to it. Next up, we have the technical interview, which is exactly like it sounds. They're assessing your technical ability to do the job. And if you're a software developer, you're probably very familiar with the technical assessments, where they may have you go off to a website and then code some problem that's given to you in a certain time frame, or you might have to whiteboard in front of an engineer so they can see and check your code. But it's not just software developers that are assessed on technical expertise. Other roles in engineering, accounting, and analytics may also have a technical component to it. In fact, even in recruiting, I had a technical interview where I had to demonstrate I knew how to do Boolean search. So if there are technical skills that you're expected to know in your job, you should plan for and expect that somebody on the interview team will be a technical expert and will be assessing them. Now, if you're heading into an interview and you're not sure which one it's going to be, I always recommend that you ask the recruiter first. We're happy to tell you what interview you're going through. We'll give you some prep because we want you to succeed. Because if you succeed, then we get the position filled and we can move on to the next one. So make sure you clarify with the recruiter beforehand so that you're adequately prepared and you have everything that you need. But if you're somebody that's freaking out about your interviewing, that's actually something that I specialize in. I've got a website called lifeafterlayoff.com, which is loaded with tips and tricks, all from a recruiting insider's perspective. And I share my deepest and most intimate knowledge in the form of some training courses specifically for interviewing. There's 2 courses that I have. The first one is called the Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp, where I take you through each round of the interviewing process. I give you tips, techniques, and tricks. It doesn't matter what kind of interview you face. You'll be adequately prepared and ultimately will hopefully get you to that job offer. And of course, I show you how to negotiate the job offer so that you don't leave a dime on the table. Now, that course is really robust. It's the kitchen sink of job search. But if you need more specific help just with interviewing, I created another course called the 48-Hour Interview Crash Course. It's designed to teach you how to ace any major corporation's interview processes, no matter what it is, in as little as 48 hours. So I highly encourage you to check those 2 tools out if you need more help in your job search. And of course, if you need more help with your interviewing, check out my playlist on interviewing. Anyway, good luck on your interview. I'm sure you'll ace it. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.